Alright, this is a 1851 Payetta Navy, Confederate Navy 44. When I bought this gun a year ago, I didn't do enough research, and I learned a couple months ago that over time, if you shoot the brass framed, I know for sure the 44s, I'm not 100% sure about the smaller calibers, but the 44s, over time, your barrel, your gap between your forcing cone and your cylinder will increase from, they say, stretching of this bar here, or from the cylinder itself slamming into the frame. You can kind of actually see a mark, which I can't feel anything with my fingernail. I've run over 400 rounds through this gun at 30 grains with the 4.454s, and I don't feel any indentations in this brass yet, back here. Hopefully it stays that way, but we'll see as time goes. But I noticed the other day I was getting a lot of blow by the cylinder, between the cylinder and the barrel. So I was checking my gap with a feeler gauge, and I got all the way up to I think 0.12 of an inch, or 0.12 of an inch, which is way that's way too much. And my barrel was, as it was assembled, I could grab my barrel with the wedge fully seated as far as it'll go. Could grab my barrel and it would move up and down. Not that's exaggerated, but it would move up and down just a little bit. So I was sitting there looking at it, thinking I watched some videos of how one guy said that you would have to, if you wanted to fix this issue, you'd have to take it to a machine shop and get it machined out in here to where they could put some kind of a steel plate back here or something like that, which would cost probably well more than what I paid for the gun itself anyway. But I got the brass because it was cheaper, and I didn't really research it. So if you got the brass and your barrel gap is, or your cylinder gap is too wide, here's what I did to correct mine. I don't see why it wouldn't work for yours. Alright, I took a flat file, and this one here for the finer, and I filed the barrel right here, right across here. See where it's discolored? That's where I filed. You can even see, you see where, just barely, just a little. I'm talking, I do 4 or 5 strokes, put it together, check it. 4 or 5 more, put it together, check it. But I filed right there, and I also filed right here on this rod, so it would seat further into the barrel, bringing the barrel and cylinder closer together, closing up the gap. And I've got this one perfect. I mean, it didn't take that long. It took maybe 45 minutes, an hour, and I got it perfect. It's like at 0.01, 0.02 right now. But I've got a bigger wedge. You'll have to get a bigger wedge too, or a new wedge, and you fit it yourself. But for now, I took this one and I put it on my anvil, and I hit on the wider side. I smacked it with a hammer on each side to widen it out a little bit. You can kind of see how it widened out a little to securely fit. It's supposed to be a wedge. It's supposed to wedge in there and hold your barrel solid. I didn't have to modify these pins or the holes that these pins go into, because these holes are actually deeper than what these pins are. They're probably, I use my calipers, probably a good 2 or 3 millimeters actually. Maybe no, not that far, but it was plenty enough. You're not going to need to take off much. So I'm going to show you what my cylinder gap is now. This is, like I said, after I filed her down, I filed down this rod here about the same amount as I filed down the barrel right here. And I did it to where it's a little fouled up. I need to clean it. It's still, I push it all the way in, and it still just barely clears the frame. That's important. You don't want it to hit the frame or be too far back. You want it to just pretty much just graze the frame like that. So anyway, put my wedge in. I use a piece of brass. Tap it in. Action smooth. I've shot it probably 10 times since 12 times since I've done this. And when you check your cylinder gap, you've got to make sure to check it like this. When you pull your hammer back, you've got like a little spring right back in here along with your pawl that rotates your cylinder. There's a little spring behind it that puts forward pressure on this cylinder to close this gap. But when you fire, the pressure's pushing on this barrel and then pushing the cylinder the opposite way. So when you check your gap, you've got to pull it all the way back to full cock and grab your cylinder here and push it back, and then check your gap. That's how you check your gap. But after that fix, my gap is perfect, and I've got no more up and down play. See if I can get a good sight of my barrel gap now. Right there it is. See there? Just barely. I mean, I think it's perfect, really. I've shot it. The gun has more power now. Nowhere near as much blow by. So it's much more pleasant to shoot. You know, I love this thing. It's just, I was worried about that gap forever, because all the videos I seen said, oh, once you get that gap, once it's shot out, they say, just put it on a mantle, it's done for. Or do the expensive thing with the machine shop, which I didn't, you know. So that's what made the most sense to me. Get the barrel closer to the cylinder. So file it here, file there, widen out your wedge or get a new one. I'm waiting on mine in the mail. And you're good to go. Alright. Thanks for watching.